Hey guys, so now we're going to talk about different ways to factor, and we're going to start with factoring out the GCF, which is the greatest common factor. Okay, there are so many different kinds of ways to factor because it depends on the kind of problem and the kind of like polynomial or quadratic that it is. And so kind of think of this as you're going to your friend's house, okay? And there are several ways to get to your friend's house depending if there's traffic, if there's a wreck, if one of the roads is closed. And so knowing several ways to get to your friend's house is beneficial because one way may technically be less miles, but like the traffic may be longer, even though it's less miles. And so you might take a longer route, but it's quote unquote easier or faster. All right. So this first way is factoring out the greatest common factor. All right. So the greatest common factor, make sure that I have the right pen. There we go. Greatest common factor. All right. Let's just talk about what the greatest common factor is for a minute. All right. So let's talk about factors of 35. I'm just going to talk about the smallest number. I'm not going to go up to this 280 because it would take me a long time to figure out the factors by hand of 280. The factors of 35 are 1, my calculator, 1, 5, 7, and 35. 1 times 35, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 times 7. All right, so then of these, I need to figure out which one of these numbers, aside from the number 1, goes into 280 and 40. All right, so 40 cannot be divided by 35. So 35 does not work because you can't do 40 divided by 35 and get a whole number. So let's try 7. Well, 40 divided by 7 does not work because we know 7 times 6 is 42. Okay, so 7's not going to work. So right now our only option is 5. So 5 is the greatest common factor of 35, 280, and 40. Let's do another. All right, now what if we have variables? So the factors of x, y squared is x, y, and y. The factors of x squared, y squared is x, y, and y. And the factors of x, y cubed is x, y, y, y. All right, and so now instead of when we had the numbers, we were looking for the biggest number that goes in. And so now we're looking for the variables, kind of like the smallest that goes in. So they all have an x, and they all have a y. They don't all have two x's. Okay, so this guy is not going to work. They all have a y, and they actually all have two y's. All right, so they all have one x, and they all have a y squared. When I said 2y, I did not mean like this, a 2y. Okay, because 2y is y plus y. Y times y is y squared. So make sure you know the difference. So this guy is our answer, xy squared, for the greatest common factor. Now let's look at something together with numbers and letters. All right, so let's take our smallest number, which is 12. The factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and then it can't be 1. Okay, so let's see 12. Let's go, because we want the biggest number. So 12 and 27. 12 doesn't go to 27. It's 24, so it can't be 12. Now the biggest number next is 6. Well, 6 and 24, and then 24 plus 6 is 30, so 6 does not work. 6 does not go to 27. Right, the next one is 4. 27 and 4. Well, 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 7 is 28, so 4 doesn't work. All right, let's times 3. Let's try 3. So 3 times 9 is 27. All right, that works. And then let's try 108. And I'm just going to do 108 divided by 3 in my calculator, and I get 36. All right, so 3 is my number. Now let's look at our letters. So our variables, x squared, y squared, x squared, y4, x cubed, y cubed. Right, x squared. So let's look at our x squared is xx, y squared is yy, x squared, and then y4. So 4 of these dudes. X cubed, 3 of them. Y cubed, 3 of them. All right, so we have 2 x's. We have 2 y's. All right, so we have x squared. I almost said cubed, and y squared. Then we have that 3. So this is our greatest common factor of that guy. And you're just kind of pulling out what they have in common. I'm aware that x squared, y squared probably means nothing to you. Okay, I just kind of want you to work within some boundaries and do the best you can within the world of mathematics. You're just now learning the rules of math. All right, now let's do the same thing, except we're going to do a polynomial. And remember, a polynomial is some terms with adding and subtracting. It could be all adding, it could be all subtracting, it could be a mix of adding and subtracting like this guy. Right? So we're going to do the same thing we did before with our numbers. So I'm going to take my smallest number, which is 12. Let's pick a different color we can read. So 12 is 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And I'm going to see, all right, 12, well, it can't ever be 1. So 12 is the biggest number. 12 does not go into 30. Let's try 6. 6 goes into 30. Check. 6 goes into 60. All right, so 6 is our number. We had x, y cubed. That's x, and then 2 y's. Then we have x squared y. So that's 2 x's and a y. Then we have x cubed y4. That's 3 x's, 4y. All right, so let's see what they have in common. They have 1x and 1y. All right, so our greatest common factor is 6. Then there was an x. Then there was a y. Okay, if I want to factor that out, okay, it just asks for the greatest common factor. So this is my answer. I'm just stating if the question said factor out the greatest common factor, I would, I'm going to wait on that for the next slide, actually. All right, so just 6xy is our greatest common factor. All right, now we factor out the greatest common factor. Okay, 8, 4, and 16. So way smaller now than where we were. So keep that in mind. Super crazy, this problem. This crazy problem. I'm aware of it. Not so crazy problem. All right, 8, 4, and 6. The greatest common factor is 4. Okay, and this guy's an x squared. This has an x, and this doesn't have an x. So there's no x you can take out. So the only number we can take out is a 4. So that 4 is our greatest common factor. So I'm going to take out the 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then I have left over my x squared and a plus sign. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. And then I have my x left over. So 4 divided by 4 is that 1 with my x left over. Bring down my plus sign. 16 divided by 4 is this 4. Okay. So when I factor out my greatest common factor, that's what I get right there. 4 parentheses 2x squared plus, okay, the most correct thing we write is just an x. I was trying to take off this one. Plus 4. Let's do another one. All right. Again, not as crazy as some of the ones we were doing. All right, 12, 16, and 8. So our smallest number is 8, and our factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. So 1 can never work, so 8. But 8 can't divide into 12, so that can't work. So let's try 4. 4 does go into 12, and 4 does go into 16. 4. And then look, they all have an x. And the smallest one is a regular x. So this is my greatest common factor. All right, so I'm going to take my 4. I'm going to divide everything. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then x cubed divided by x. So this is like a 3 minus a 1 is squared. And then I have my plus sign. And then I have 16 divided by this 4 over here. And so I get 4. And then there was an x squared divided by x. And you have 1 left over. Because you're doing like 2 minus 1 is 1 left over. Then a plus sign. And then this 8 divided by this 4 is a 2. And then I have that x divided by an x. It's just 1. So I'm going to leave it like that. This guy. 4x parentheses 3x squared plus 4x plus 2. That's my answer. I factored out the greatest common factor. Let's do another. Okay. Don't freak out. That doesn't help us when we freak out. Let's look at this. It looks crazy, right? 15x times that dude, 2 minus 3y, minus 10x squared times 2 minus 3y. All right, what if this just said 15xw, it's an x, minus 10x squared w? Okay, then what they have in common is they have this w in common, okay? They have an x, at least one x in common, and 15 and 10 you can take out of 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then they both, I could take out one x. So this x, I took out the x. And then they both have a w. I'm going to take out a w. All right, so I got this 3 because I did 15 divided by 5 from right there. And then I did x divided by x, this x divided by this x. Then I did w divided by w. Then I have my minus sign from right there. And then I have 10 from right here divided by 5. This 5 is 2. Then I have x squared from right here divided by this x. So 2 minus 1 is just an x. And then I have this guy. Remember, we're calling that w. So w divided by w. Remember, it's just 1. Okay? But w stands for 2 minus 3y. So just write 2 minus 3y. Minus 3y. Okay, that one's really hard. Let's do one like it again. Oh, that's one that's not like it. Oh, just kidding. Okay. This guy. This is the hardest it's going to get. All right, 10, 20, 15, and 5. You take out a 5. They're all divisible by 5. They all have an x, and the smallest x we see is a plain old x. We have a y squared, y squared, y cubed, y squared. The smallest y we see is a squared. All right, so I'm going to come over here to the 10. 10 divided by that 5 is 2. And x cubed divided by x, so 3 minus 1, there's 2 left over. And then this squared divided by that, they cancel each other out, and then I have a plus sign. And then 20 divided by 5 is 4. And then x squared and x, so 2 minus x, 2 minus 1 is 1. Y squared and y, those cancel, then I have a plus sign. And 15 divided by 5 is 3. X and x cancel. Y cubed and y, so 3 minus 15 divided by 5, silly, is 3. And then y cubed and y, you have a y left over plus. 5 divided by 5 is 1. X and x, y squared and y squared, so you just have 1. So you have this guy. That is the absolute hardest it will get. Probably not that hard. Maybe on homework, but not like a test or a quiz. All right, so do your homework and practice work, and I'll see